Welcome to the Great Old Ones channel. For today, let's read a little bit out of the first edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Dungeon Master's Guide and get some perspective into late 70s and early 80s role-playing game philosophy from one of the original authors of this particular game that we like. Firstly, from page 9, Approaches to Playing Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. A few brief words are necessary to ensure that the reader has actually obtained a game form which he or she desires. One of the two approaches to the hobby games today, one is best defined as realism simulation school and the other as the game school. AD&D is assuredly an adherent of the latter school. It does not stress any realism, in the author's opinion, an absurd effort at best considering the topic. It does little to attempt to simulate anything either. Advanced Dungeons & Dragons is first and foremost a game for the fun and enjoyment of those who seek to use imagination and creativity. This is not to say that where it does not interfere with the flow of the game, that the highest degree of realism hasn't been attempted, but neither is it a serious approach to play discouraged. In all cases, however, the reader should understand that AD&D is designed to be an amusing and diverting pastime, something which can fill a few hours or consume endless days as a participant's desire, but in no case something to be taken too seriously. For fun, excitement, and captivating fantasy, AD&D is unsurpassed. As a realistic simulation of things from the realm of make-believe, or even as a reflection of medieval or ancient warfare or culture or society, it can be deemed only a dismal failure. Readers who seek the latter must search elsewhere. Those who desire to create and populate imaginary worlds with larger-than-life heroes and villains, who seek relaxation with a fascinating game, and who generally believe games should be fun, not work, will hopefully find this system to their taste. Certainly falls along the lines of my philosophy. This is a game, although there is a little bit of work getting games and stuff up and running. Game Master's got some work to do ahead of him. But in general, this is just entertainment. Shouldn't be taken. Never anything like this should be taken too seriously. It's an escape from reality, not a replacement for it. Also, on page 59 here, I've selected a little passage about infravision. Light sources which give off heat also absolutely prevent normal infravision from functioning within their sphere of illumination. Explain this as the effect of trying to see into the dark when an observer is in a brightly lit area. It requires not less than 2 segments to accustom the eyes to infravision after use of normal vision. I translate this to the modern equivalent of dark vision. It should be run where just walking from bright light into dim light isn't like an automatic switch. It takes a little bit of time to adjust. I think that's probably one of the shortcomings of, even though it is somewhat explained in the 5th edition rules, it really isn't hammered home that the dark vision and infravision back in the 70s was some sort of magical be-all for vision and stuff in the dungeons. I kind of don't like that they put something like that into it. It takes some of the fear and excitement element out of it if you can see in the dark. On the same token, same page, invisibility. Invisibility is not what most players desire it to be. It is neither a soundproofing nor an odor preventative. Normal sound issues from the invisible creature, just as do normal odors. Monsters might well be able to hear, smell, or see the invisible character. Furthermore, the associates of the invisible party are not able to see him or her any better than the foes are, so this can cause problems too. Now consider a silent spell and large area invisibility cast upon a party. Imagine the chaos within the area as characters stub their toes on the heels of the person before them, with the inability to hear anything, so that falls, suggestions as to what should be done, or orders cannot be heard. Consider also that dust on the floor will betray most invisibility, as will dust or powder in the air. Think of a door opening without any visible cause. This will cause suspicion in the mind of the viewer, particularly when surroundings are taken into account. You bet it will. It's one of those things about the newer editions of the Dungeons & Dragons I'm not particularly fond of either. It's the mindset that invisibility and stealth rules make the character trying to use these virtually undetectable, and that's not necessarily the case. On page 60, mirrors. This is something I've also seen abused, and it makes perfectly logical sense if you think of it this way. It is important for DMs to remember that in order to be reflective, a mirror must have a light source. You're in the dungeon, you're using dark vision or infravision in the case with the 70s game AB, and you're using a mirror. Well, what is reflecting? Nothing. So it makes the use of a mirror a non-existent source of information at that point. We'll continue on to page 61, Encounters, Combat, and Initiative. This is a pretty lengthy segment, but it deals a lot with the philosophy of the game at the time. Combat is divided into 1 minute period melee rounds, or simply rounds, in order to have a reasonably manageable combat. Manageable, quote unquote, applies to both the actions of the combatants and to the actual refereeing of such melees. It would be no great task to devise an elaborate set of rules for highly complex individual combats with rounds of but a few seconds in length. It is not in the best interest of an adventure game, however, to delve too deeply into cut and thrust, parry, and riposte. Location of a hit or wound, the sort of damage done, sprains, breaks, and the dislocations are not the stuff of heroic fantasy. The reasons for this are manifold. As has been detailed, hit points are not actually a measure of physical damage, by and large, as far as characters and some other creatures as well are concerned. Therefore, the location of hits and the type of damage caused are not germane to them. While this is not true with respect to most monsters, it is neither necessary nor particularly useful. Lest some purists immediately object, consider the many charts and tables necessary to handle this sort of detail, and then think how area effect spells would work. In like manner, consider all of the nasty things which face adventurers as the rules stand. Are crippling disabilities and yet more ways to meet instant death desirable in an open-ended episodic game where participants seek to identify with lovingly detailed and developed player character personae? Not likely. Certain death is as undesirable as a giveaway campaign. Combat is a common pursuit in the vast majority of adventures, and the participants in the campaign deserve a chance to exercise intelligent choice during such confrontations. As hit points dwindle, they can opt to break off the encounter and attempt to flee. With complex combat systems which stress so-called realism and feature hit location, special damage, and so on, either this option is severely limited or the rules are highly slanted towards favoring the player characters at the expense of their opponents. Such rules as double damage and critical hits must cut both ways, in which case the life expectancy of a player characters will be shortened considerably, or the monsters are being grossly misrepresented and unfairly treated by the system. I am certain you can think of many other such rules. Yeah, I can think of a lot of them. I mean, that's just the way the system's moved along. Wasn't a whole lot of direction before this Dungeon Master's Guide was written, so a lot of homebrewed rules and stuff came out about critical hits, hit locations, crippling injuries, things of this nature, and most of it was skewed towards the player, which made them overwhelmed monsters. And okay, now we got to beef up the power of the monsters and stuff, and it was a never-ending cycle that seemed to run away, and they basically lost sight of the generic nature, the open nature of the game, as opposed to being so specific. Continuing on, 1 minute rounds are devised to offer the maximum of choice within a minimum of complication. This allows the DM and players the best of both worlds. The system assumes much activity during the course of each round. Envision, if you will, a fencing, boxing, or karate match. During the course of 1 minute rounds of such competition, 1 minute of such competition, there are numerous attacks which are unsuccessful, feints, maneuvering, and so forth. During a 1 minute melee round, many attacks are made, but some are mere feints, while some are blocked or parried. One, or possibly several, have the chance to actually score damage. For such chances, the dice are rolled, and if the to-hit number is equal or exceeded, the attack was successful, but otherwise it too was avoided, blocked, parried, or whatever. Damage scored to characters or certain monsters is actually not substantially physical. a mere nick or scratch until the last handful of hit points are considered. It is a matter of wearing away the endurance, the luck, the magical protections. With respect to most monsters, such damage is, in fact, more physically substantial, although, as with adjustments in armor class rating for speed and agility, there are also similar additions in hit points. So while a round of combat is not a continuous series of attacks, it is neither just a single blow and counter blow affair. The opponents spar and move and seek opportunity to engage when on opening in the enemy's guard presents itself. So there's where I think some of the philosophy of the rounds and stuff got away from it in later editions. This 6-second round of the new thing is an incredibly shortening of all of this. Probably born out of a lot of the game systems that came out to try and accurately model combat, which accounted for every swing, every parry, every thrust and riposte and stuff like this described in this. And the early on philosophy was combat was a lot more generalized than this. The specifics of it weren't really part of it. Losing sight of this created these systems. Now we've got double damage, we've got automatic hits, we've got critical hits with max damage, actions, bonus actions, you name it, pile it on. A lot of stuff came out of the misunderstanding of exactly what was trying to be accomplished with the combat rounds. We can move over to page 82, which is another favorite part of my book here. Hit points. It is quite unreasonable to assume that as a character gains a levels of ability in his or her class, that a corresponding gain in actual ability to sustain physical damage takes place. It is preposterous to state such an assumption, for if we are to assume that a man is killed by a sword thrust which does 4 hit points of damage, we must similarly assume that a hero could, on the average, withstand 5 such thrusts before being slain. Why then the increase in hit points? Because these reflect both the actual physical ability of the character to withstand damage, as indicated by constitution bonuses, and commensurate increase in such areas as skill in combat and similar life or death situations. The sixth sense, which warns the individual of some otherwise unforeseen events, sheer luck, and the fantastic provisions of magical protections and or divine protection. Therefore, constitution affects both actual ability to withstand physical punishment, hit points, physique, and the immeasurable areas which involve the sixth sense and luck, fitness. So one of the things that seems to bug me is over the years of the thought that the hit points somehow or another relate to actually directly to physical damage and not just the other mystical aspects of a heroic fantasy campaign. Conan, for example, many hits may have been scored on him, but those were all mere scratches and things like this that didn't really consume hit points. A lot of his ability was with the fighting ability, stamina, intimidation factor against his enemies, the plot armor that goes into the written up the stories, those kind of things. And hit points should not be thought of directly as specifically the ability to withstand a great amount of damage. It's explained in there, magical protections and or divine intervention and things like this in the heroes that we're trying to play. On page 86 of the book, the campaign, unlike most games, AD&D is an ongoing collection of episodic adventures, each of which constitutes a session of play. You, as the Dungeon Master, are about to embark on a new career, that of Universe Maker. You will order the universe and direct the activities in each game, becoming one of the elite group of campaign referees referred to as DMs in the vernacular of AD&D. What lies ahead will require the use of all your skill, put a strain on your imagination, bring your creativity to the fore, test your patience, and exhaust your free time. Being a DM is no matter to be taken lightly. Yes, this isn't something you just want to jump into, I'll run some games and stuff. There's a lot that goes on into DMing philosophy and putting together an entertaining product for your friends or associates or something like this. It's more, and again, there's more to it than just being, I'm a storyteller and we're going to tell stories. There's a lot more involved in that to help make sure everybody has fun, including you as the DM. On pages 91 and 92, there's some notes in there about placement of monetary treasure. Here is where a lot of games, in my opinion, seems to blow up, if you want to look at that word. All monsters would not and should not possess treasure. Really? The treasure types given in the monster manual are the optimums and are meant to consider the maximum number of creatures guarding them. Many of the monsters shown as possessing some form of wealth are quite unlikely to have any at all. This is not a contradiction of the rules, but an admonition to the DM not to give away too much. Any treasure possessed by weak, low-level monsters will be trifling compared to what numbers of stronger monsters might guard. So in distributing wealth amongst the creatures which inhabit the upper levels of dungeons, dungeon-like areas, as well as for petty monsters dwelling in small numbers in the wilderness, assign it accordingly. The bulk of such treasure will be copper pieces and silver. Perhaps there will be a bit of ivory or a cunningly crafted item worth a few gold pieces. Aha. You mean I'm not going to find 40,000 gold pieces in that chest that the kobolds are holding, all 6 of them? No, probably not, right? We giveaway campaigns at the beginning, and it's also pertinent in the next thing I'm going to say too, or what Gygax did called Monty Hall, where, hey, look what's behind door number C. Oh my God, look at this vast treasure that's in there. Placement of magic items. Just as it is important to use forethought and consideration in placing valuable metals and other substances with the monsters or otherwise hiding them in dungeons or wilderness, the placement of magic items is a serious matter. Thoughtless placement of powerful magic items has been the ruination of many a campaign. Not only does this cheapen what should be rare and precious, it gives player characters undeserved advancement and empowers them to become virtual rulers of all they survey. This is, in part, the fault of this writer, who deeply regrets not taking the time and space in D&D to stress repeatedly the importance of moderation. Powerful magic items were shown, after all, on the tables, and a chance for randomly discovery of these items was given, so the uninitiated DM cannot be severely faulted for merely following what was set before him or her in the rules. Had the whole been prefaced with an admonition to use care and logic in placement or random discovery of magic items, had the intent, meaning, and spirit of the game been more fully explained, much of the giveaway aspect of such campaigns would have willingly been squelched by the DMs. The sad fact is, however, that this was not done, so many campaigns are little more than a joke, something that better DMs jape at and ridicule, rightly so on the surface, because of the foolishness of player characters with astronomically high levels of experience and no real playing skill. These godlike characters boast and strut about with retinues of ultra-powerful servants and scores of mighty magic items, artifacts, relics, adorning them as if they were Christmas trees decked out with tinsel and ornaments. Not only are such Monty Hall games a crashing bore for most participants, they are also a headache for their DMs as well, for the rules of the game do not provide anything for such play. No reasonable opponents, no rewards, nothing. Creative DM can, of course, develop a game which extrapolates from the original to allow such play, but this is a monumental task to accomplish even with passable results, and those attempts I have seen have been uniformly dismal. Another nadir of the dungeon mastering is the killer dungeon concept. Really? Killer dungeon concept. Tomb of Horrors? Okay. These campaigns are a travesty of the role-playing adventure game, for there is no development and identification with carefully nurtured player personae. In such campaigns, the sadistic referee takes unholy delight in slaughtering endless hordes of hapless player characters with unavoidable death traps and horrific monsters set to ambush participants as soon as they set foot outside the door of their safe house. Only a few of these killer dungeons survive to become infamous, however, as their participants usually tire of the idiocy after a few attempts and enjoyable gaming. Some lucky ones manage to find another more reasonable campaign, but others, not realizing the perversion of their DM's campaign, give up adventure gaming and go back to whatever pursuits they followed in their leisure time before they tried D&D. AD&D means to set right both extremes. Neither the giveaway game nor the certain death campaign will be lauded here. In point of fact, DMs who attempt to run such affairs will be drumming themselves out of the ranks of AD&D entirely. Advanced Dungeons & Dragons aims at providing not only the best possible adventure game, but also the best possible refereeing of such campaigns. Now, it seems to be a contradiction with Guy Geiss's development of the Tomb of Horrors, but it almost seems to me that Tomb of Horrors was kind of developed as a joke or on a dare or something. Oh, I dare you to come up with something, and he did. And while it is extremely lethal and very dangerous, you can get through it. Very clever player characters, very clever people, paying attention to what descriptions and stuff that a good game master can give them for that dungeon, can get through it. Difficult, but it is still a winnable game. Well, I think I've run through quite a bit, a pretty lengthy video on this, reading through some passages from the first edition of Dungeons and Dragons, and a lot of my favorite quotes and stuff that came out of it, and has helped drive me in my role-playing game dungeon mastering philosophy. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. If you've got some suggestions for further topics and stuff you'd like to hear about, please leave a comment below. Thanks again for joining me.